First, let's talk about the foundational work that we did. So why did we embark on this path? I'm hearing some keywords that I wrote down from the other speakers. Here's one. I think the pastor said, if you can't do business, what are we doing? Right? If you can't do business, what are we doing? That's part of it. But a lot of times, and I think Andrew said this too, if you can't manage your own time, you're wasting time. I call that the cost of delay. So what we wanted to do together was come together and understand that, this landscape is changing. Raise your hand if things change. Always changes, right? Absolutely. Understanding that standing still is not an option. We have to adapt because the species that survives is not the most intelligent. It's the species that what? Adapts. Absolutely. So we wanted to adapt too. Also wanted to empower them as well as they go through their journeys. So what was our mission? Right? We want to accelerate business outcomes. Let me give you a story. I'll tell you a little bit more about my background in a minute. But when I was consultant, I worked with Brigham and Women's Hospital in Boston, Massachusetts. Famous hospital, right? Harvard Medical School, right? They put me in the surgery room, in 3 surgery rooms with the surgery team. This is Kevin. The time that we put the patient in to the time we rolled the next one out, hour and 15 minutes. So think about the math. How much it costs to run a surgery room, how much it runs a hospital. They said, Kevin, we want to get it down to 30 minutes. 2 weeks, I met with the head surgeon, anesthesiologist, the NIC, the nurse in charge, and the cleaning crew, and we got it down to 30 minutes. That's a $600 million valuation of savings in 2 weeks. But here's the thing, what we see on here is accelerating these business outcomes and doing efficiency processes. And the key group was the cleaning crew. The surgeon didn't even know the cleaning crew's names because they didn't talk to each other. They were working in silos. So the point about being efficient in business is breaking down the silos. Just as Andrew said, right? Self-time management. We're going to get into that a little bit later as well. So we wanted to equip the affiliates, right, to rise up, right, fulfill their mission, have a bigger impact on our communities and the work that they were doing, right, and a brighter future to these communities that we serve. So a little bit about me, just really quickly. Have my own consulting agency. I started in 2015 at my kids' high school that I was teaching there. They said, hey, can you come in and do some more training for us? I'm like, sure, I can. You have a business? I said, I will tomorrow. When I lined up my LLC, you know the whole story, right? I was doing this while I was working at Harvard. I was at Harvard for 15 years. Did some teaching there, did some IT stuff, and I'll be so upset if I didn't recognize the media and tech people in the room. Big round of applause, please. I'm gonna tell you why. I actually came up the technology ranks at Harvard doing what they do. Without them, none of this happens. So I did that, taught at the Harvard IT Academy, and then in 2018, Harvard said, well, I don't think there's any more roles here for you anymore. You're gonna have to start looking outside of Harvard. 2 years before I could pull out my retirement. I was like, okay, thank you. So what did I do? I left. I went on, started my own business, like I said, and did some consulting. Landed on my feet, and then guess what? 2 years ago, they said, can you come back and teach here? I said, of course I can. So now I'm back at Harvard teaching part-time. I work in the fintech industry as well, doing these process improvements. You can see the different industries on the screen that I worked in: food and beverage, biotech, air defense, healthcare. I've been all over the place doing this sort of work. And you know what? We all have the same problems. You know what they are? Is what Andrew was talking about earlier today. We waste time. We don't have focus. Right? You heard Simone say, hey, we want to find one thing to improve. We can't improve the whole boat at the same time. We want to make sure that we pick a thing or two to fix. So what we did was some foundational work, right? You got to dig the ground and pour that concrete. So what you're going to see today, I'm going to walk you through the journey with me and the affiliates who raised their hands all the way to what you're seeing today. So the first thing we unpacked was leadership. What's a leader? Is a leader a manager? We talked about emotional intelligence. What do we need to be able to influence people, right? To be able to follow. Marcia's got that down. This is why we're all here, right? Solving the problem. What is the problem? How do we, boil that down? I'm going to show you a chart how we did that. Innovation. Think outside of the box. Just because we're a nonprofit organization, we still should think like a for-profit organization. Does money come in? Does money come in? Does money go out? That's a P&L statement, right? So we're going to look at the results with some of these conversations we had and some of the exercises we went through. So this is the progress through the program all the way through. So what is leadership? What is leadership to you? Shout it out. Vision. What else? Service. Yes, absolutely. It is. So we took a couple of ideas from this person here, Vince Molinaro. He had a book out. I'm going to go through this really quickly about what he thinks is important. So if you're a leader, don't make things harder, right? We want to learn from our mistakes. We want to do the opposite of this. We want to keep everything in perspective, right? And we don't want to be distracted and losing focus. Andrew talked about that earlier today, right? And don't be the leader that people leave. You know that 80% of people leave their jobs because of why? They're managers, right? The document says it all together. But here's some tips though, right? So are you tolerating mediocre behavior in your area? Don't do it. Right? Are you setting really super clear expectations of what you want out of yourself and your businesses, right? So here's your 5 leadership obligations. Number 1, I think it was Andrew with that mask on, do yourself first. You have to take care of yourself first. You have to take care of yourself first. This is why you're here, right? This is why HomeFree-USA sponsored that program we did with some of the affiliates, right? Then your customers, the organization, employees, all those other folks come later, but you have to be accountable to yourself first. So that's some of the leadership stuff that we went over. But we did a deep dive on emotional intelligence. Who can help me identify what emotional intelligence is? Any idea what that is? Emotional intelligence. Shout it out. Self-awareness. Yes. What else? Accountability. Absolutely. Yes. So Daniel Goleman, he really popularized it, but these 2 gentlemen here kind of coined the phrase back in the day, these 2 professors. But here are the pillars in emotional intelligence. I'm going to tell you why they're important. Who said self-awareness? Raise your hand. Yeah, it's really important because if you have emotional self-awareness, you can control yourself and be able to manage yourself in certain situations. Remember that word I used, adaptability, being able to adapt? That's your self-management. Then you can achieve what you need to achieve. I think it's really important to talk about this because we talk about the work a lot. Do we not talk about the work a lot? Well, we got to do the work. We got to do the work. We got to serve the communities. Yes, all of that is important, but if you don't have these underpinnings of emotional intelligence to be able to persuade, influence, take care of yourself, have empathy for your clients, and so on and so forth, and have your own self-management so you can influence, like I said, and also coach each other and coach other people, right? Have conflict management. Any conflicts ever happen in your world? Raise your hand. Right, all the time, right? This is why it's important to unpack what this emotional intelligence is all about and also practice it as well. And also, teamwork is the key. Me being a former Marine, teamwork is really important to me. You ever see the video online where one Marine climbs up the wall and then he starts to pull the other Marine up and then the other Marine starts to push the other one up? That's teamwork, right? They join arms together. And that's how we inspire each other as well. So here is really quickly how you break it down. So what I see is self-awareness, how my personal competence, right? What I do is my self-management. So I'm looking, controlling myself. My social awareness, this is where we are right now. This is our social awareness. These are the underpinnings and the key things for leadership and also our relationship management as well. All together, who has a piece of paper and a pen? Take out your pen and a piece of paper. I want you to do something really quick. Under each one of these headings, executing, influence, relationship building, and strategic thinking, write 1 or 2 things down in those categories. Do it on your piece of paper real quick. 1 or 2 things, you got your piece of paper and a pen out. Executing, influencing, building relationships, strategic thinking. Pick one of those things at the bottom if you think that is you. I see some folks writing. 1 or 2 things under executing, 1 or 2 things under influencing, 1 or 2 things under building relationships, and 1 or 2 things under strategic thinking. Now, when you think about these strengths that you have, your leadership strengths, we're going to pull it down to what I call Kevin's EI OODA. This is what we call the OODA loop. So this is how we pull it all together. So first you observe, then you pull in that self-awareness and social awareness piece. Then you orient yourselves. This happens in a split second. We're slowing it down right now so we can understand what it looks like and what it means. When we orient with self-management and relationship management, then we decide, like one of those 4 strengths you just wrote down, what are we going to do then? And then act our leadership style. I'm going to break this down. Anyone ever heard of the comedian called Patrice O'Neal out of Boston, Massachusetts? Right, he passed away a few years ago. And what he described was when he was arguing with his girlfriend, he said what he was thinking, what he was feeling in his stomach was foul. But he was smart enough not to say what he was feeling. He was using emotional intelligence. Then he said he took that feeling and he took it to his heart and he massaged it a little bit more. Then he took it to his brain for further analysis. Then he spoke. That's emotional intelligence. Right, so talk about clear outcomes. We had conversations. We had some of this training. We talked about leadership. We talked about emotional intelligence. Then we started really getting down to business. But before that, we sent a survey out to the affiliates to ask them some questions. So we gathered some insights, right? Looked at the results, looked at the data, right? Then the next step was doing a problem-solving exercise. This was the bulk of the work that we did together. So it all boiled down to these three categories: operations, internal operations, programmatic, and production goals. That's what it all boiled down to. There's a lot of words and a lot of data and surveys that come back, but we boiled it down to these three key things. So with that, we started doing some experiments and started innovating a little bit. So turning that data into action. So the first one was people, training and engagement. Second, streamline their operations. Third, goal setting metrics, being really clear about what they were trying to accomplish. So we did that together. So the problem and the root cause analysis. How many people actually sit down and do root cause analysis, or you just start solving the problem? Yeah, people are giggling because, yeah, we want to solve that problem right away, but we really slowed it down and did some root cause analysis, right? So you ever heard of the A3 problem solving process? Comes from lean manufacturing, the Toyota process. So we did that. So the first thing we did was we talked about the background, describe your current situation in detail, right? Then said, okay, what's the current condition like? So where are the data and the facts related to what you're talking about? A lot of deep thinking, a lot of conversations had to happen to come up with that, to find what the actual root cause was, right? Then, okay, so now that you know that, what's your goal target? Like, this is where we are now. Where do you want to go later in terms of being more efficient in your operations, right? And solving that one problem so you can reach more people. Then we did some more analysis on the root cause, right? Using toolkits like the 5 Whys. Raise your hand if you ever heard of 5 Whys. Right, 5 Why routine. If you haven't, here's an example. I'm walking in the park. I step on a piece of glass and it cuts my foot. Why is there a piece of glass in the park? Oh, because the park people didn't clean up the park. Why didn't the park people clean up the park? Because the city government didn't have any more money. Why didn't the city government have any more money? Because the federal funding, the new president, whoever that person was, cut that funding out. 5 Why routine. Do that 5 Why routine, because when you dig a little bit further, you're going to find the real cause of it. Then we talked about countermeasures, what the experiment we're going to do to increase the data, increase membership, whatever they wanted to do. We'll see some examples of that a little bit later. And then implement the plan. So it's about the think, act, do routine to get all this stuff, and then you follow up. Describe about some countermeasures and how it's going to be effective when you're actually doing your experiment. And the results, and summarize the results and all the outcomes all together. So that's what we did together. We're going to see some of that work in a second here. So again, remember, it's people, process, and products. Everything you do boils down to those 3 categories: people, process, and your products. So implementing change. This is exactly what we did. We had a sheet of paper, and we went through this whole routine and had conversations. They actually had some breakouts in between our meetings. We had little mini teams together to actually have these kind of conversations. So after that, I brought them back in and said, hey, we got to focus. This really actually speaks back to Andrew's conversation about context switching and multitasking. Who's really good at multitasking? Yeah, that's right. No hands go up because we can't multitask. Science has proven we cannot multitask, but if you look at Weinberg's table, if you dedicate 100% of your time to a task, you could drive it to done. It's about time boxing, right? It's about making that decision and driving it to done. Now, if you do 2 things at once, look at your waste column. You're wasting 20% of your time, right? And we can put a cost of delay on all those red columns. I work in corporate America, I work at Harvard University, and I guarantee you most people that I work with are wasting 75% of your time. Don't pay yourselves and don't pay your people to waste 75% of their time. Time box that work and drive it to done. This is Brooks' Law. You ever heard of Brooks' Law before? When you add more people to a team, it makes the project later. So I got to throw more people at that. And a lot of us are, people resource short, right? We have to do with what we have to do with what we have. And we worked on that as well. But one thing we don't talk about is the socialization debt when we bring new people on board and train people, right? We got to pull that into capacity. How many people are good at capacity planning or think about it? Raise your hand. Capacity planning, you have to bake that into your processes. Oh, well, we have to do this, we have to do that, but do you have the true capacity to do it? And if you don't, this is where you really start to time box in your work and driving things done and really hyper-focus on something so you can get it done. That's Brooks' Law. Now, here are some process efficiencies in flight. Now, do we have the microphone ready to go for some of the affiliates? I think some of them are sitting over here in this area. Is the microphone ready to go? Great, thank you, Brandon. All right, so this is what we have in flight, reach. These folks said, hey, you know what, Kevin and team, we need to increase our attendance in our classes, right? So what they started to do, you'll see more about this a little bit later, they started using personas in some of their marketing. They really targeted down who that person might be in their marketing that they could speak to. Is Ken here? Great, stand by, Ken, perfect. So their approach was the personas and doing more innovative systems. Current attendance is 926, they want to go to 2,400. So this process is in place for them. A really big goal for 50 to 100%. But they went through that routine, that A3 exercise routine to find out what the root cause is. And now they can implement something a little bit better, a little bit different. Okay, Ken, give Kim the microphone. So transforming the intake process. Here was the challenge, right, Ken? Outdated intake process system. I heard a conversation yesterday about CMS system in the other room, right? And training required, and so it's all time consuming. Next slide here talks about the solution. Client doing the data entry, right? Streamlining process, doing videos. Ken, help us unpack this a little bit more.
So the challenge that we have with our operations is, adapting to the pandemic, we certainly have had our clients fill out their intake form through like our DocuSign, Sign Now, which then, as a result, we have to then have our intake staff input that into our client management system. How we can be able to just help in terms of streamlining that process can help in terms of that staff time can be focused on other activities beyond that could support the counseling operations.
Right, so the trajectory is $20,000 in savings, right? Accuracy rate enhancement from 80 to 98% because of that. That's a big increase, right, Ken?
Mm-hmm. That's correct, yes.
And then if you look at the timeline, they're going to do some training videos. That's happening right now. They're going to examine those results later in October. Give Ken and his team a big round of applause for finding that problem and creating that solution. Thank you, Ken. Next one. Here we go. So this is the final little slide on it, 20,000 in savings and 80 to 90% stat. Okay, family housing resources. Megan isn't here today, but this was her goal to increase the newsletter opening rate by 15%. We send literature out. We send electronic emails out. We send things out to folks, but if they're not opening it and reading it, we're not going to be able to get any response back. So this is the current rate for their target, but the target rate was a little bit higher. They wanted to go to 55% within 6 months. So they have a plan in place for that. The goal is to increase funding by 10%, do some more strategy, again, using the persona stories as well to enhance that. Later in the slides, you're going to see some real-time enhancements with the persona approach as well, and then secure at least 2 more funders. So overall, newsletter engagement, 15% open rate, and then funder donations by 10%. Megan's not here, but give her a round of applause for doing this thinking and give her this work as well. So here's some actual results from things that went all the way through the process and some really good outcomes that came in. Where's David, the dancer? Where's that? There he is, right here, right in front of me. David the dancer, yes. Let's bring the mic over here to David real quick, please. So in terms of efficiencies, HomeFree-USA themselves actually did some real work as well, right? So the problem was delays due to clients not providing timely documentation. You guys are in the business. Is that a problem? Yes. Is that a problem? Yeah, it sure is, right? So now the counselors are wasting all this time, right? Trying to, persuasion. It's just a big time waste. But what they did was, and Dave's going to talk a little bit more about it, was this client flow based on the credit score. The intervention was this action plan. David, help us unpack it a little bit more.
Sure. When we met with the new clients, we determined where they were in the home buying process, if they needed credit help, if they needed, or if they were mortgage ready. So we kind of put them in different streams of programs. And after working with all the home ownership advisors, we have been able to increase the receipt of documentation by 35%. So it really has been a great tool in looking at people, where they're at, and determining what we need based on that.
Great. Round of applause for HomeFree-USA. So as you can see, just implementing one small change in the way in which that you work can garner big results. We look at a big problem sometimes and think, man, we got to tackle that big problem right now. What we want to do is just, what's the slice of that problem? What can we hyper-focus on, analyze it, and drive it to done, but with discipline and consistency, right? Okay, here's the next one. So faith and community empowerment. Here's Hapen. Right, microphone over here, please. All right, so metrics, right? Conversion rate, 30%. New approach offered appointment links during the class. So she had a captive audience. She said, you know what? Let's offer the class now, right? Now the result is 54 students attended, 15 signed on the spot, 46% signed up in 1 month. Kind of help us unpack that a little bit more.
Sure. Many of the students, when they take our homebuyer education class, the next step is to sign up for a counseling session. But, you know, part of the challenge is that very rarely does majority translate into a counseling appointment, and we walk through the process of why. And part of it is just that they're fearful, they don't want to deal with all those, documents that they have to collect. But also, again, it's a matter of scheduling. So we gave an incentive during the class to sign up for an intake session, and we tell them, use it as a deadline. And if they can't make it, then, they could always reschedule. And that seemed to alleviate. And we did give some incentives to sign up during the class for an appointment, for an intake, and that has translated into, actually, it's not 30%, it's almost like 50%.
Almost 50%, that's
and
great.
Usually it's about 30% during the year and over several months, but like literally that day, we're able to take them to that next step.
Round of applause. One small improvement can increase your data. Now, leveraging the personas, we're going to go a little bit deeper in how some of the affiliates leverage their personas in their marketing campaign. So first of all, why do we use personas? How many people use personas? Here's one of the reasons why. You can do targeted marketing that will speak to the people who you're trying to reach. Product development is another one. Customer retention, right? Customer creation, customer support, cost-effective marketing, doing social media. It doesn't really cost much to push things out social media-wise, especially for your persona. So let's look at one of the personas. This is from Help CDC, all right? So where's Nicole? Let's give Nicole the microphone. Great, thank you, all right? So Nicole created this persona. Nicole, tell us a little bit about the creation of this persona and why you did it.
We worked with TechSoup through Truist / West SunTrust, and through that campaign, we were assigned a company who helped us design exactly what we were looking for. At the time, we were trying to figure out how to address errors and put a face on it. So once they were able to do that, it made more sense. They literally took the time to write a story about a typical person, and once you put it like that and make someone real, then it was easier to go out and find funding.
Right, and then your marketing campaign, you went through this flow here too. This is sort of the customer journey, right? In terms of how do you attract people coming in, how do you engage with them, but then how do you delight them and get them to be a promoter and really close the conversation and close the deal. And then later here, Nicole, have a conversation with me quickly about this particular user journey for that persona.
The goal is to get someone to come in where they, on the left is awareness, so they can come in through social media on all those different ways. But the object of the game is to get them through enough relationship so that they become someone who promotes your agency.
Awesome. So here's some of the buckets in social media. We know what all these buckets are. They're always zinging and binging and zinging us on our telephones, right? But that's the campaign. But now the final result here, Nicole, right? For your active campaign, open rate increased and your click rate increased as well. Help people understand what's the benefit of that.
Active Campaign allows you to send out lots of emails, but it also helps you track when they're opening the emails. So for each person, each contact, you can see, okay, they opened it twice, and then they clicked a link, and you can see all the activity. For what we do, it's nice to be able to have the receipts, as they say. So when people say, I didn't get that email, yeah, you got it, you opened it, you clicked on something, and I'll send you a screenshot. So that's why something like Active Campaign and automation really helps. No one has time to send individual emails, but when you can create a drip campaign through Active, where they're getting an email every 3 days, and then you have tracking, and you have it's just great information, good data.
Thank you, Nicole. One small change in their campaign. So this is the final one. How much more time do we have left? So now we have increasing hope. Where's Dorothea? Where is she? Oh, great. Microphone over here, please. So also leveraging personas as well in the media campaign. We have 2 back-to-back campaigns using social media to increase what they needed to increase. Tell us a little bit about your personas and your campaign objectives.
Well, our personas were developed around our different programs. So we had a female that was working, that was maybe low to moderate income. We had a individual that was a business owner that we can market to, a potential business owner for our business development courses. And then we had that one that was a student. And so anytime we do marketing, we can literally address those individuals through the identified persona.
Absolutely. So look at these numbers here. We see an increase in Facebook, increase across the social media platforms here. And this was over a month period. This is actually this past August, last month, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, this past month. So this is real-time data we're getting.
Exactly. And what it allowed us to do is, I think what is a great thing to do is having those personas. We are not a large enough team that we have a marketing person on my staff. I do not. But I could put this in the hands of our contracted individual, and they'd be able to still understand our agency, market for our agency, and it be consistent across the hands of anyone that would get it because they would relate to the personas.
Absolutely. And then here we see more growth, the growth over 12 months. Look at that chart bar. It keeps going up, up, and up. That's the trajectory we want in terms of getting responses for some of the media campaigns that you and your organization were doing as well. Here is the demographics, right? So it looks like the biggest group is 35 to 44, right? Female, 75, was it about 76% as well, right?
Yeah. So once again, all of the information is coming from the social media or marketing. Is helping us solidify who we are as an agency. We can say that we serve mostly African American women, not just, oh, is that because that's who you think you serve, or is it who you serve? Well, we can show that to potential funders. I can show that to my board or to the staff, and so that we understand exactly our age group and our demographic that we're serving.
Absolutely. Then overall rates, your increase with your newsletter, these are some really impressive open rates as well, right?
Yes, yes. And so everything just went up from social media, our newsletters. The engagement is better because I think we talked about it earlier. We get to tap into them on an emotional side because they can relate. Now the social media posts, they can relate to them as individuals or as real life folks with real life challenges and problems that they themselves have, and so they click. So.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Round of applause. One small change. One small change. I think there's about 5 minutes left. If you have any questions for any of the affiliates or for myself, we can answer some questions. Yes, sir.
So could you define persona and the process that you go through in order to create that? Because as you were going through this, I'm realizing that that's not an actual customer, but
Right.
a customer that's been kind of
Right. So you want to create a fictional person of your client base. So you can choose, we can make it a male or a female based on looking at your real data. Right, put a face on it, like Nicole said. Put a face on it. And Nicole, you sent that persona out to a whole bunch of different people, in the way that they interacted with it. Like, wait a minute, this is more personal. I can see who your customers are. So you think about some demographics, age average, maybe income. You can go as deep as you want on a persona. But when you're writing your campaigns, you're actually doing your work. I do this a lot with some corporations. Have that persona in front of you, so you can look through their lens when you're creating products, and creating things for them to come in to enjoy and things for that they need for themselves as well. And from a funder perspective, if I'm a bank, if I'm a funder, I can see who that persona is, I can see who your client base is, and now I might have a little more empathy and understanding like who I might be serving. Thank you for the time. Good to see everybody.